I welcome you all for the wireless communication lecture module. In this session, we are going to discuss about the handoff strategies. As earlier we have discussed in a cellular architecture, a large geographical area is divided into smaller number of cells. So each cell having its own base station, that base station provides coverage within that particular cell. Similarly, that base station will allocate channel for that number of users inside that particular cell. Consider a scenario when a user is moving from one cell to the another cell. Consider that is in a traveling. So when the user is moving from the one cell to the another cell, the control has been moved or handover from the one cell to the adjacent cell or one base station to the adjacent base station. So this is called as a handoff. A handoff strategy is nothing but the process of breaking down the connection from one base station and establishing the connection with a new base station is called as a handoff. Okay, so normally the handoff is occur at the overlapping region of the two cells. When UV moves from the different cells, when E is in the call is in progress, the MSC automatically transfer the call to the new channel belonging to the new base stations. If a user is using a channel from a one particular cell, obviously when E is moving from one cell to the adjacent cell, obviously the channels which are in that new cell has to be provided to that user for the effective communication. Okay, so for the effective handoff strategy, we need a handoff threshold. The handoff threshold plays a vital role in a controlling over the handoff from one cell to the another cell. So consider there are two handoff strategies or we are creating. One is improper handoff situation and the second one is a proper handoff situation. So we look at that both the conditions over here. Look at the top diagram. Okay, and here we have a two number of cells. Okay, cell A and cell B. The cell A has the base station 1 and the cell B has the base station 2. So here the user is moving from the cell A to cell B. Consider that initially the user is at the point A. Look at the bottom of the diagram. We have a point A. Initially the cell is at the user is at the point A. Now we are considering improper end of situation. So when the user is at point A, it is with respect to the base station 1 is at the edge of the cell. So normally the received signal level which denotes in the y-axis initially at the higher level. So as the user moves from the point A to point B, the received signal level will going in a decay stage. So when he moves from the point A to point B, initially we have a value called a handoff threshold value. So handoff threshold is nothing but a minimum threshold value that the handoff has to be taken place. It is the minimum threshold value in which the handoff has to be taken place. And after the handoff threshold, still the user is further moving towards the B, then we have a minimum acceptable signal to maintain the call. If the received signal level goes beyond the minimum acceptable signal level, obviously, for example, if the user reaches at the point B, obviously he has crossed the minimum acceptable level. The signal strength is reduced to the minimum acceptable level, so obviously the call will be disconnected or the call will be terminated when the user is reaching from the point A to point B. If the handoff has been not taken place, obviously the call will be disconnected. So this concept is called as improper handoff situations. Consider the second scenario when the proper handoff situation, when the user is at the A, obviously the received signal strength is at a higher level. So when the user reaches the interface between these two cells, at that particular time, the received signal level will reaches the handoff threshold value. So in a proper handoff situation, when the user reaches the interface between the two different cells, obviously the signal level which will be the control will be properly transferred to the base station so 2. So when the interface, when the user reaches the interface, obviously the handoff will be taken place and the control will be given to the base stations too. So when further moving towards the B, obviously if is moving towards the base station, so again the signal level gets increases. So this is the proper handoff situation. So the handoff has to be taken place before reaching the threshold level or at the exact threshold level. So threshold selection is a critical in terms of a handoff. If you're setting the higher threshold, obviously the unnecessary handoff will be taken place. Even if the user in base station one itself, if you're setting a higher threshold value, obviously the control will be handed over to the base station two. So if the threshold value is too much low, then the user even after reaching the cell 2, the control will not be handed over to the base station 2. So for selecting a threshold is an important or critical thing in terms of a handoff situation. So for prioritizing the handoff, we are using a two handoff strategies. One is a God channel concept, and the second one is a queuing of a handoff request. In the God channel handoff, so the total number of available channels, if you have a 10 channels, you know that 10 channels, out of 10 channels, 7 channels will be allocated for the traffic, and the 3 channels will be dedicatedly allocated for the handoff. Okay, so if any new user comes to that particular cell, obviously that user can use that three channels. So those three channels will be dedicatedly allowed for the handoff. This is called as God channel concept. The drawback of God channel concept is that we are particularly reserving set of channels for only for the handoff. So that reduces the capacity of that particular cell. Okay, but the advantage of this God channel is the handoff will be good because we are reserving some number of channels only for the handoff. So the handoff will be good over here, but the capacity of the particular cell will be reduced. So the second handoff strategy is queuing of a handoff request. Here there is a finite time interval between the received signal strength going below to the threshold level and reaching the call disconnected level. There is a finite, as we have a look at the improper situation, there is a proper finite time delay between the handoff threshold and the call terminated. So within that period of finite period of time, we are giving the control or we are queuing the handoff request. So once the channel will gets free, the queuing handoff will be taken place. So this concept is called a queuing of a handoff. So here the advantage is the full channels will be used for the traffic. Okay, only if there is any queuing request, then only the channel will be allocated for that particular handoff. The drawback of queuing method is that when all the channels are in use, or all the channels are allocated to the number of users, when all the channels are used, even after you queuing our handoff request, if the channels are not getting free, obviously the call will be disconnected. This is the drawback of queuing of handoff. The prioritization of handoff can be happen because of two things. One is a God channel concept, and the second one is a queuing concept. So handoff is nothing but we are disconnecting control from the one station and we are establishing the connecting with the new base station. This concept is called as a handoff.